I never thought I'd see the day when my own barn, built to protect cattle and store hay, would become a prison cell. Yet there she was, the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, locked inside like a stubborn goat that had wandered too far. Karen, the HOA president who had made my life a living nightmare, was pacing back and forth inside the livestock pen, screaming about her rights and how this was illegal. But the irony was too rich. After months of her trespassing, harassing and threatening me, I had finally caught her red-handed on my farm, and this time I wasn't letting her slip away with another smug grin. But let's rewind. You need to know how we got here, because it didn't start with me locking up an HOA tyrant in my barn. It started the day I bought the farm, a dream I had worked years to achieve. I had saved every dime from my contracting business to finally leave the suffocating suburbs behind. I wanted space, freedom, and the satisfaction of raising crops and animals without someone dictating the color of my mailbox or the length of my grass. But as fate would have it, my land shared a boundary with a subdivision ruled by none other than Karen, an HOA president with a clipboard glued to her hand and a voice that could pierce concrete. And from the very first day, she made it her mission to remind me that even though I wasn't technically under her HOA, she believed she could still influence how I ran my farm. That first week, I found her leaning against my fence, sunglasses perched on her nose, clipboard clutched to her chest. "We expect a certain aesthetic in this community," she said, eyeing my tractor like it was an eyesore. I laughed it off, assuming it was a one-time encounter. But little did I know, Karen doesn't back off. Karen escalates. What started as complaints soon turned into full-blown trespassing. At first, she'd stand at the edge of my property, snapping photos with her phone. She'd mutter things like, "Too many weeds," or "That barn color is unacceptable." I ignored her, thinking she'd eventually get bored. But then, one morning, I caught her strolling right through my field like she owned it. "Excuse me," I shouted, waving from my porch. "You're on private property." She smirked and held up her clipboard like it was a badge of authority. "As HOA president, I have the right to inspect nuisances that affect our neighborhood." I couldn't believe the audacity. "This isn't your neighborhood," I fired back. "This is a farm, my farm. Now get off my land." But Karen didn't leave. She doubled down. She started showing up regularly, sometimes in the early morning when I was feeding the chickens, other times in the evening when I was watering crops. I'd find her snooping around the barn, peeking into equipment sheds, even rattling gates to make sure the animals weren't mistreated. Each time I warned her. I documented her visits, even called the sheriff once, but the deputies only gave her a slap on the wrist. "She's a bit overzealous," they said, "but unless she damages property, our hands are tied." That's when I realized, if the law wasn't going to protect me, I'd have to protect myself. And here's where things get interesting. Because the more I pushed back, the more reckless Karen became. One night I caught her sneaking near the chicken coop with a flashlight, muttering about health violations. Another afternoon, she opened my barn door and walked right in, claiming she was checking for unsafe chemicals. It was only a matter of time before her arrogance collided with my patience. I decided enough was enough. If Karen wanted to act like a farm inspector, then I'd treat her like one of the pests I trapped to protect my crops. I set up motion-activated cameras around the property and reinforced the barn gates with heavy-duty locks. Then, I left a few bait opportunities. A slightly open barn door, a wheelbarrow full of tools left outside, and the chicken coop gate unlatched just enough to look tempting. Sure enough, Karen couldn't resist. One humid afternoon, as I pretended to be away in town, my cameras lit up with motion alerts. There she was, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand, marching straight into my barn like she was on an official inspection. I rushed back quietly, parking down the road and sneaking through the side field. When I entered the barn, I found her rummaging through feed sacks, scribbling notes, and even snapping photos of my tractor. "That's it," I said, stepping out of the shadows. Karen spun around, startled. "You can't sneak up on people like that," she barked. "No," I said calmly, "but I can stop trespassers." Before she could scurry out, I pulled the barn gate shut and slid the lock. Karen lunged forward, rattling the bars like a trapped raccoon. "You can't do this! I'm the HOA president!" "Exactly," I replied, "and now you're in my jurisdiction." For the first time, I saw fear flash across her smug face. She tried demanding her release, threatening lawsuits, even screaming for help, but my farm was secluded enough that no one heard. And in that moment, I realized I had turned the tables. For months, she had treated me like an animal she could control. Now she was the one pacing inside the pen, powerless and furious. I didn't keep her locked up forever, just long enough for the lesson to sink in. I filmed her tantrum from start to finish. Karen shouting about community standards, Karen rattling the gate like a caged pig, Karen begging me to let her out. Then I calmly explained on camera that this was the exact treatment she had forced upon me. Trespassing, snooping, and acting like she owned what wasn't hers. When I finally unlocked the gate, she bolted out like a startled chicken, tripping over her own clipboard in the dirt. "You'll regret this," she screeched, running toward the subdivision. And she did try to retaliate. She called the sheriff, the county office, even animal control, claiming I had kidnapped her. But when the deputies reviewed my security footage, months of her trespassing, plus the video of her inside my barn, they didn't arrest me. In fact, they gave her a stern warning about harassment and trespassing. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The HOA president who claimed to enforce rules was the one breaking them all along. Word spread quickly. Neighbors whispered about the day Karen got locked in a barn. Some laughed, others were horrified. But one thing was certain: she stopped trespassing on my farm. She couldn't show her face without people snickering about her clipboard prison sentence. And me? I finally got my peace. The chickens clucked, the crops grew, and the barn returned to its rightful purpose, housing animals, not HOA tyrants. The best part? Every time I walk past that pen, I smile. Because I know that for once, the bully who thought she could control everyone was put in her place. She wanted to play farmer? Well, I let her experience what it feels like to be livestock. And trust me, she won't forget it.